welcome to another live edition of Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. As you can see, just me tonight. No Lana. Lana's got the night off. Her son is in town, and Lana's got priorities. So we certainly understand that. We understand that there are more important things in life than our silly little show here. But if you are joining me, I appreciate you joining. And I am trying to figure out why my battery is going down and not going up. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. So in case I cut out, that may be the reason. But welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. I hope you had a great Easter Sunday. I hope everybody was able to get through the weekend and maybe put the news aside and try to calm down and let everybody take a breath, because that's what we kind of need now. We need to sort of find little ways to separate ourselves from all the madness that is happening in this country. But the madness continued today as the press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, welcomed in a gentleman named Tim Pool. If you're not familiar with Tim Pool, I congratulate you. You shouldn't be. But if you are familiar with Tim Pool, you would know that he is one of these far right-wing nutbags who has a podcast, who's unregulated, can basically say whatever he wants. There's also been a story that he was receiving $400,000 a month from what appeared to be a Russian propagandist or whoever it is that was giving him this money. He tried to pretend he didn't know where the money was coming from. So there was a big story regarding the money he was getting to his show, and it also appeared that he was reading Russian propaganda on his show. But Tim Pool has now been welcomed into the press pool where Caroline Leavitt answers questions for the president every single day. This is leading us to, without a doubt, the dumbest political timeline in the history of our country. This is absolutely absurd that Tim Pool is getting access to the press secretary to ask questions. And sure enough, not only was he there, he was the first person to be able to ask a question to Caroline Leavitt today. And here was his first ridiculous question.
News organizations that are represented in this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as
Why? I wonder why he couldn't wear a suit.
the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by two different judges, I believe, is just simply being referred to as a Maryland Man over and over again. Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on following this expansion you've had.
Keep in mind, there are real journalists sitting there with actual questions that pertain to this country, that pertain to world diplomacy, democracy. There's so many different things that are way more important than this ridiculous question that he is putting on a tee for her. And that's really the idea, is why they're going to continue to allow these far right-wing idiots to come into the press pool and ask questions. But real journalists are sitting there that went to school for this. And you have this 5 foot, 94-pound dipshit in a beanie asking questions because he has a podcast.
Had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on that unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well, we certainly welcome diverse viewpoints in this room, which is one of the...
You know, I just say I don't even care about her answer, because her answer is just going to be as ridiculous as the question. And maybe a lot of people haven't really followed politics for a very long time, even maybe people my age, and they don't understand just how absurdly ridiculous it is that somebody like Tim Pool is in, first of all, just even close to the White House. Forget about being in the press pool, but now he's in the press pool with a press credentials hanging around his neck, and he is asking the press secretary, who her entire job, or his entire job, whenever there was a man as a press secretary, is to speak for the president to the press, who was designed to question authority and to question what's going on in this country just to keep them at bay. But we now have a whole apparatus that has developed over the years that has now come to its perfection, where they have shaped the narrative that everybody else in that room is fake news, and Tim Pool is the guy asking real legitimate questions. These are the questions real Americans want to know that Tim Pool is asking, not you, fake New York Times, who's been around since the 1800s, not you, fake Washington Post, that's been around for about the same amount of time. Tim Pool, this moron who does a podcast on far right-wing issues, and again, possibly was paid by Russia to spread Russian propaganda on his American show, is frontline and center asking questions to the press secretary. And if you are not alarmed by this, then you have not been paying attention for a very, very long time. And if you are not alarmed by this, you should be. And if you're asking, well, Brian, why should I be alarmed by this? Then you should probably do a little bit more research on the history of politics in this country and find out why we're at where we're at right now. A lot of this started in the Reagan administration when they got rid of the fairness doctrine, which basically said that if you have a viewpoint on one side, you have to be able to give the other viewpoint on the other side in the same medium, whatever it was. And the Reagan administration got rid of that. Then comes Fox News, and then comes social media, and then comes podcasts, and now it's a free-for-all. And that's the reason why Donald Trump is anywhere even close to this White House. Because had there not been this far right-wing propaganda media, Donald Trump would be nowhere near the White. I mean, he wouldn't even be close. But you have an apparatus that literally has no problem blatantly lying about what's going on in this country, how they're handling the country, how they've shaped the narrative of the Democrats. If you ask just the normal person on the street, again, who doesn't really follow politics, they would tell you, Democrats are getting weird though, man, because all they do is care about boys playing in girls' sports. And for some reason, they want people to cross the border illegally, and they're causing all this crime, even though if you ask them, they couldn't name one person in their life that they've been affected by in either one of these situations that I'm bringing up. But this is the narrative that's been shaped, and it's been shaped so badly that we have people in this country that look at somebody like me, who's a registered Democrat, and I'll promise you, I don't really care about the party. I don't care about the title of being a Democrat. I'm a Democrat, if you want to call it, by default, because look at what's going on that other side. It's fucking crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And there's no way I would ever vote for that. But I do fall in line with the Democratic way of being. They're just better people. I mean, they care more about people. But the narrative that's been shaped about somebody like me or anybody else like me is that not only are we different politically, but I am their enemy. I'm trying to destroy this country. The people who are voted into office are trying to destroy this country. And it is so absurd that you have people that go out and they vote, and you ask them, why'd you vote? And they said, well, because I don't want my daughter playing against boys in sports, even though the percentage chance of that happening is you hitting the lottery 3 weeks in a row, basically, is about the same chance as your daughter playing in a sport against a boy. And even if they are playing in a sport against a boy, doesn't even necessarily mean that the boy is dominant and is going to kill your daughter. I mean, this is just so insane that we're even having this discussion. It drives me nuts every day that not only is this something that's just a casual conversation, it is frontline and center. It is highlighted as a top issue of the day, and it's so stupid. And what's even dumber is people are falling for this nonsense. And I'm going to play a clip later in the show that is maybe something that I've been talking about for a very, very long time, but it might be the best clip I've ever seen in anybody talking about this kind of subject. And it's just great. So hang on till the end of the show and you'll be able to see this clip. For me, if I saw it and I heard somebody saying this clip is so awesome and I watched it, I'd be like, nope, he's right. That was not overhyped. That was fucking brilliant. I loved it. Hopefully you do too. But in that same press conference, here's Caroline Leavitt. We're going to go, and there's going to be a couple of clips coming up here. And I will tell you, this is maybe the first podcast that I've done in a very long time where there's 0 clips of Donald Trump. I needed a Donald Trump break. But unfortunately, there's too many people in this administration that we can play that is associated with Donald Trump. But just to hear his voice this week, good news for you if you are tuning in. You're not going to have to hear Donald Trump's voice this week. But Caroline Leavitt in this same press conference talks about how they are reversing Joe Biden's elimination of student loan debts in his last administration. But I want you to hear a theme in each one of the voices of these people when they speak. It is calculated. It is manipulated. It is manufactured. All the language that they use is meant to either make you angry or to hear it over and over and over again so you believe their nonsense, because it's just human nature. It's like advertising. If you see an advertisement over and over and over again, you're like, holy fucking shit, I'm in the mood for a Whopper. And then you go fucking buy a Whopper. That's what they do. And they're doing this on purpose. This is a $1 billion manufactured machine that they've been putting together for decades. And it has worked on the American people. And then when you throw in other countries getting involved who are infiltrating our social media and infiltrating podcasters like Tim Pool and letting them regurgitate their message, it confuses the shit out of American people, because most Americans are, like I said, lazy politically, and all they hear stuff is on the peripheral. And if they hear things on the peripheral and they really don't do a lot of research on top of it, and they just allow that message to continue to resonate in their brain, then we're fucked. If you don't go and do the additional research, you're voting against your own interest. And then at the end of the day, when things go backwards on you, you're like, what happened? I thought Donald Trump said he was going to lower prices of gas and groceries and everything else on day one. I thought he was going to end that war in Ukraine. I thought he was going to end the war in Israel on day one. I thought he was going to do everything. I thought no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Where is that? And then eventually, when you're at retirement age and your 401k is shit, and your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid is cut. And if you're a farmer and you no longer have the subsidies, or you no longer can afford your business because of this administration putting tariffs on the entire fucking world, then you start to open up your eyes a little bit and go, what is this really, Joe Biden? Did I really vote because I didn't want my daughter playing against boys in girls' sports, and now I'm stuck with my farm going under, or I'm now stuck not being able to pull out of my 401k. I don't know. It's a pretty hell of a flex to go against your own interest. But again, here's Caroline Leavitt, and just listen to how proud she is that she is really destroying some people who were celebrating the fact that they didn't have to pay back some of these student loans. Now, one thing I will tell you, if you want to argue with me that you don't agree that Joe Biden should have cut student loans, I'm not going to push back on you too much about that. I don't really give a shit. If you can help the American people, because we give bailouts to companies constantly when they fuck up. So if we're going to do it for companies, I'm perfectly fine doing it for fellow Americans, even though I was not able to benefit from it. That's basically what I was saying earlier. Democrats are better people. They just, if you can help other people, even if it doesn't benefit me, I am perfectly fine with it. But if you're somebody on the other side and you want to argue that they shouldn't have done it, that's fine. But Joe Biden was going to cancel student debt for everybody. The Supreme Court stepped in and said, you cannot do that. But Joe Biden did find places in the Supreme Court ruling that did not apply to the places that he did cut. And he was legally able to cut these. So if you hear any idiot next to you say, well, Joe Biden ignored the Supreme Court. He didn't ignore the Supreme Court like this administration's doing. What he did is he found stipulations that were outside the purview of the Supreme Court ruling and said, okay, well, let's at least cut these student loan debts. But listen to the proudness of how happy she is that she's doing this. And she's very adamantly, strangely happy about it.
Trump administration has announced we will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts. No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th, the Department of Education will resume involuntary collections for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. The student loan portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable, unfair, and a huge liability for American taxpayers. Debt cannot be wiped away. It just ends up getting transferred to others. So why should Americans who didn't go to college or went to college and responsibly paid back their loans pay for the student loans of other Americans?
You'll notice they'll never have the same energy when we have to bail out major corporations.
The Trump administration will never force taxpayers to pay student loan debts that don't belong to them. Student loan borrowers need clarity, and we're finally giving it to them. Borrowers will now be clearly expected to repay their loans, and those who default on their loan obligations will face involuntary collections. The government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers, tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages. America is $36 trillion in debt. We must get our fiscal house in order and restore common sense to our country. If you take out a loan, you have to pay it back. It's very simple.
Yeah, tell that to Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of the other people who took out the PPP loans, which were afforded to many companies that were affected by the pandemic. And if you owned a company and you had to pay your employees, you could take out these PPP loans to help your company. But Marjorie Taylor Greene's company took out those loans, and she did not have to pay any of those loans back. But she is the kind of person like Caroline Leavitt who would be on the front lines, basically ragging down the people who are happy, again, that they do not have to pay back these student loans. And again, it's just cruelty. And that's what this whole administration is about. I mean, we see it with the immigrants. It's all cruelty. What we've seen with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that is absolute cruelty. And, you know, that's the one guy we keep talking about. But they put over 200 people on this plane to Venezuela and sent them to an El Salvadorian prison. One guy was a gay hairdresser that had a tattoo with no criminal record whatsoever. In fact, 75% of the people on that airplane had zero criminal record, but they just picked him up and put him in a prison in El Salvador with no due process. And I continue to hear people on the right, I mean, are adamant that they deserve no due process because they were not born in this country, but that is absolutely not what the Constitution says. The Supreme Court ruling was 9-0 that they needed to make arrangements to bring this guy back, and they still haven't brought him back. And again, these are the kind of things that if you're not paying attention to and you're not angry about it or you're not concerned about it, eventually things are going to creep up where you're going to be shocked about what is happening in this country. It's happening right now, but too many people still are not paying attention enough. They don't know what is going down in this country. They have no idea how horrible the economy could get if we continue to go down this path. Donald Trump continues to put pressure on Jerome Powell, who is the Fed chairman, to lower interest rates when Jerome Powell knows that that is not a great idea to do that right now, especially with his tariffs in place, because the tariffs are going to wind up raising the interest rates. And if the interest rates go up, then lowering, or I'm sorry, if the inflation goes up, that's what I meant, inflation. If inflation goes up and you lower interest rates at a time where inflation goes up, that is a recipe for disaster. Jerome Powell knows a billion times more about the economy and how to handle this way better than Donald Trump. And you can prove that because under the Biden administration, who actually allowed Jerome Powell as the Fed chairman to do his job, by the way, Jerome Powell was given that position by Donald Trump his first term. So this is not a Joe Biden appointee. This is an appointee by Donald Trump. And he was doing everything he can to make sure that we navigated a pandemic that ruined the economy throughout the entire world. And the way Joe Biden and Jerome Powell handled the pandemic in the United States, we wound up coming out of that better and faster than any other country in the United States. Donald Trump was handed the number one economy in the entire world when he took over. And the fact that not only did we never hit a recession under the Biden administration post-COVID, he set record numbers during a post-COVID economy. Those record numbers, he created the most jobs of any president in the history of this country. That is indisputable. If anybody wants to try to come with me and say, yeah, but I'm going to cut them off at the yeah, don't even bother that with me, because every president goes by the exact same metrics, and Joe Biden created more jobs than any president in the history of this country. Shockingly, under Joe Biden, during the pandemic and through the pandemic, unemployment was under 4%. We like to see under 5%. It was under 4%, and it was under 4% for 2 straight years, which hadn't been seen in 50 years. We had the unemployment rate at 3.4%, which is the lowest it had been in 50 years. Joe Biden's economy that he handled Donald Trump was fantastic. And towards the end, Jerome Powell started to lower the interest rates because he saw the inflation go down as low as 2.4%. They like to be more around 2%, but they lowered the inflation to 2.4%. So he started lowering interest rates, and interest rates were going to continue to go down naturally, which is the way you want to do it. You don't want to manufacture interest rates going down, because that leads to a recipe for disaster. That's exactly what Donald Trump wants to do. And I'm telling you, if you're not that familiar with this and you're listening to this and you hear that somehow, some way, Donald Trump was able to get rid of Jerome Powell, who's the Fed chairman, which he can't, but they will always try to find a way. They'll send it to the Supreme Court. And if this far-right Supreme Court rules in favor of Donald Trump somehow and gets rid of Jerome Powell, buckle in, because it's going to be really, really bad, because he's going to put in one of his yes men, like he has put in every single position in this administration. And it's going to wreck our economy so badly that you're going to wind up, unfortunately, having to recall 2008. And you're just hoping it's not even worse than that. So I don't say this to be hyperbolic. I don't say it. People say, you just hate Trump. You just want to say, it's not because I hate Trump. What I do is I listen to experts on the situation, just like during COVID, when a fucking doctor says, hey, you know what? Do me a favor. Put on a fucking mask. Stay 6 feet away from people, because we want people to get out. I know you've been tied up in the house, and we're trying to figure this out the same way you are. This is kind of new to us, so bear with us. You know what I did? I said, you got it, doc. I'm going to put on the mask. I'm going to stay 6 feet apart. And even if you're wrong on that, I appreciate you at least giving me some instructions in the beginning that may help us. If something comes out later that it might not have, I still appreciate you trying to figure it out in such a quick and timely fashion so we can figure out the best way to handle this and not be trapped in our houses. That's what I do. When my car breaks down, I take it to a mechanic. I don't just ask any random person on the street if they can figure out my car. If it has anything to do with the stock market, I would ask an expert, what do you think? And that's what I do with the economy. I listen to experts. Not one expert has said that the tariff deal that Donald Trump has put in right now is a good deal. The Wall Street Journal, that is owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News, said it's the dumbest trade war in the history of this country. Fox News, the Wall Street Journal also was saying he's setting up for his third impeachment because it's so bad. And I say this because I study this. I hope they're wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not rooting for it so I can say, see, I told you Donald Trump sucks. Saying Donald Trump sucks is not that important to me. Trust me. My money, my livelihood is way more important. And my livelihood depends on interest rate. It depends on the economy. So I'm not rooting for it in any way so I can celebrate that I said I told you so. I told you so is just really a very brief satisfaction in life. But after that, it means absolutely nothing. And I'm already setting up for it to mean absolutely nothing because it's going to affect me. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect people you know. And it's going to get ugly if this continues the way that it goes on. Hopefully somebody comes to their senses and figures it out. But we're going to see. I was talking about how inept and ridiculous this administration is. This Pete Heseth is an absolute disaster. If you recall, there's already a controversy of him before he even came in. I mean, this guy has 3 different wives. He's sleeping with women while he's married. He's getting them pregnant. He's being accused of sexual assault. I mean, there's all kinds of things. He's accused of drinking while he's on the job, that he was an alcoholic. Is he still? I have no idea. Indications are that he may still be on the sauce, but people said, if you hire this guy as our defense secretary, which is the most important position, not really in the country, in the entire world when it comes to military, that person is in charge of everybody in our entire military. Most people said, this ain't going to work out well. This is going to be pretty bad. We probably shouldn't be hiring a guy with absolutely no experience at all to do this job. And his top thing on his resume is that he was a Sunday morning Fox News host. He wasn't even on the main Fox and Friends. He was on the C team of the Fox News Sunday morning show. And for some reason, this administration thinks that he is the best person to head up our entire military. If that doesn't freak you the fuck out, the story subsequent to that should. You probably heard that he was busted by sharing war plans in Yemen to bomb the Houthis on an app that any of us can download on our cell phones. Not only was he sharing those on an app that's easily hackable by just probably some douchebag kid sitting in his room here in America, it could be hacked by anybody in the country. And it is clear that other countries are always trying to hack in to American intelligence. And maybe they would be shocked to know. They probably didn't even think about hacking into Signal because they'd be like, nobody is that fucking stupid to do that. But guess what? They are that fucking stupid to do it. And that was busted. And on top of that, they included in their little text messages, as they're using emojis too to discuss war plans, they included a writer for The Atlantic into the text messages. And he's like, what the fuck is going on here? He exposed this. They basically said, you're a liar. We did not expose war plans in that text message. And the very next day he goes, okay, fuckers. I mean, you don't think I have a screenshot and all this? Yeah, you did. And then called them out. Well, it turns out that not only did he do it with a writer, he also did it with his wife, his brother, and his attorney. So he's in complete damage control. This entire administration seems like they've been in damage control, and we've only been doing this for 3 months, folks. We've got another 3 years and 9 months of this fucking nonsense. But they're doing damage control. And here is Brian Kilmeade, who he actually is one of the Fox and Friends. He is one of the players that you actually see during the week, and doesn't make him a smart guy. He's possibly just as dumb as the rest of them, maybe the dumbest, but he has a theory as to why this news about the text messages to his wife, his brother, and his lawyer has come out. And of course, it's another doozy.
You come in with war experience and all your great background. Do you think there's a lot of people who don't want you there, and there's some type of deep state forces that want to make sure you don't stay there?
Of course.
They've come after me from day one, just like they've come after President Trump. I mean, I've gotten a fraction of what President Trump got in that first term. What he's endured is superhuman. It's not hard for me to do this job. I know exactly why I'm here. To bring war fighting and the war fighting ethos back to the Pentagon, to rip out the insidious ideologies and not compromise and not back down, to bring in new press voices into the Pentagon, which we.
By the way, I just want you to look at this guy's demeanor. I've got another clip after this. He's all hopped up and hyped up, and I don't know. Just watch his demeanor, watch the way he talks, and this is just not. First of all, it's not the demeanor of a normal person, but it's really not the demeanor of somebody that you want in charge of our national security.
Done to reestablish standards and accountability, to not tolerate leakers, to 100% operational control of our border, to get rid of trans lunacy in the military. We haven't backed down. See, here's the thing. A lot of people come to Washington and they just play the game. And it's you punch their ticket and get along to go along. And start doing Meet the Press and going to the Council on Foreign Relations and spending time with all the new cocktail sipping crowd. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because President Trump asked me to bring warfighting back to the Pentagon every single day.
Right.
That is our focus. And if people don't like it, they can come after me. No worries. I'm standing right here.
Yeah, okay. So the pretend tough guy act of Pete Hegseth, because he knows he's under fire and he feels like at any point he could be fired, and that still is possible. There are reports that they are looking for his replacement, and I think maybe he's just trying to put on his best show to say, I'm still here, you're not going to get me. And these people in the Trump administration and Trump himself, they've all learned one thing. We're not going to be held accountable by anybody, the American people, by the Supreme Court, by Congress people, by constituents. Doesn't matter. We're going to run over every one of you fuckers because we're in control now and you can't do anything about it. That's the attitude that they have towards the American people, whether it is me, whether it is people in Congress, even if it's people in Congress who vote for them. They're basically saying, if you go against us, you are now our enemy. And if you are a Republican, you are our enemy if you go against us. And we will make sure that you do not have your job next term. And we're going to make your life hell while you're in office. And that is this mafia mentality that this administration has. And this is definitely not what America is all about. I don't really care if there is a Republican in office that is normal, that understands the Constitution, that understands what this country is all about. I'd rather have the Democrat because I side more with their policies. But if there was a real Republican in office, he's not going to destroy the country, even though if you look at outside of Trump, 2 out of the 3, actually 4, when you have Nixon, you have Reagan, who was way overrated. He was terrible. And he is the person who really started to destroy this country. George H.W. Bush, I think, was a little underrated, to be honest. I think he got a little bit of a bad rap. I'm still glad Clinton won, but H.W. was not a terrible president. He was actually pretty good. But George W. Bush was an absolute disaster. Nice guy, want to have a beer with him, but he was an absolute disaster as a president. And if you notice those presidents that I named, Reagan, H.W., W, and Trump, when they all left office, they left the previous administration a nightmarish economy. They left them recessions. They left them a nightmarish economy. And when Clinton took over, he had to take over a recession. When Barack Obama took over, it was one of the worst economies in the history of our country that he had to take over. And then when Biden had to take over, he had to take over a pandemic economy that was terrible. And I don't even blame Donald Trump necessarily. Hello? I think I'm back. Hold on. Sorry, guys. The battery went dead on me, so I hope you're still there. Let's see. If you are watching on YouTube and you can still hear me, please just type yes in the chat somewhere, if you don't mind. Or if you're watching on Instagram, please type yes in the chat and let me know that you're watching somewhere, so I know people can hear me. But anyway, that's such a pain in the ass. I don't know why this battery is doing this. I hope it doesn't do it again. But anyway, we were talking about the demeanor of Pete Hegseth. Again, just watch the way he talks. He looks in the camera. This guy's doing his best impression of his favorite professional wrestler, whoever it is. Just bizarre affect. And again, concerns me that this guy is the guy who is in charge of our national security.
The media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled.
Real quick, I'm going to go back. Watch the right side of his face. You see a sideburn there, and then watch the left side of his face and see if that same sideburn is there.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me.
Look at him staring at the camera like he's scaring people. By the way, those are his kids in the background, and those kids look confused. They look scared. I notice a lot of the kids in the background for these MAGA morons are always looking like, oh my God, my dad's fucking crazy. But did you notice the sideburns? Did you notice there's one on the right side and there's not one on the left side? That's an indication that maybe he wasn't in his right frame of mind when he was shaving. Not accusing the man of anything necessarily, but it is a little bizarre.
Because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, doesn't matter, he says. And Pete Hegseth, like I said, he's going to go down swinging. And, you know, if some people, when you're in that position, That's all you can do. So if you want me to give him something, I'll give him the fact that he's going to go down swinging, and he's going to make sure that if anybody out there is watching him, you're not going to troll him, not on his watch. But his time may be coming to an end. So do not be surprised if one day you see the news and we have a new defense secretary. I would say the only good news about that is there's almost no way you can't go up. I mean, you can't get any lower than Pete Hegseth. I mean, you could be a little step above him, which maybe that's the only saving grace here, but you cannot be worse than Pete Hegseth. You just can't, because he's a hothead. He has zero experience other than being in the military. That's the best experience that he's had with that job. And it's absurd that this guy is in charge of our military. Hopefully we put somebody in there way more qualified than him. I still don't even know how he passed through. There was some weakness there with Congress, whether it's Democrats and or Republicans, that allowed him through. So, but here we are. And most people said this is going to turn out to be a disaster. And literally not 3 months in, disaster. Anyway, we're going to continue with the craziness. Nancy Mace is another one who is just batshit crazy. She is now in Congress, and this woman is somebody that is literally dying for attention. I mean, she just needs attention so badly, and she will do whatever it is she can to get it, even if it means being batshit crazy. And I think she has seen that works for others in Congress, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert. These people are so nuts that they get so much attention on Fox News that she loves this attention. Well, one of her constituents ran into her. It appears that at a CVS or some store. And he just asked her, do you plan on doing any town halls? Because if you've seen the town halls going on around the country, you see a lot of very upset and angry people. In fact, some of these town halls are now being screened because they want to make sure that you voted for that person in order to get into that town hall, so there doesn't appear to be any anger. Now, I'll also say, doesn't necessarily work out for them, because a lot of people who did vote for them are still pissed off and angry. You'll notice a lot of those town halls, older people who are collecting their Social Security, 401ks, all this stuff, and they see that their 401ks have tanked and they are pissed, and they're not stupid. They know why their 401ks tanked. It's because of what, again, the Wall Street Journal called the dumbest trade war in the history of our country. And they're not happy. But this constituent called her out and asked her, do you plan on doing any more town halls? Now, for some reason, Nancy Mace is filming him and thinks this is a positive thing for her. I'll let you be the judge after watching this clip.
I do them every year.
Every year.
You want to keep going?
Are you going to do any more this
Do you want
year?
to keep going and keep harassing me?
I'm asking if
You
you're
could
gonna
have
have any more
gone to a
town halls
dozen
this year.
town halls last year.
I asked if you're doing any more this year. It was one simple question.
Yeah.
Are you doing a town
I've
hall
already
this year?
done one. I'll do
Are
plenty
you doing
more.
any more this year? It was a simple question.
You're always invited.
Okay, sweet. We'll look
And
out
by
for
the
an
way,
actual invitation
I
for the next
voted for
one.
gay marriage twice.
What does that have to do
So
with me?
I'm just.
I mean, just the brazenness of automatically assuming that this guy is gay. I mean, this is who these people are. They're just not good people. They're terrible, awful fucking human beings. And how anybody could vote for this or be behind this, especially if you pass yourself off as a real Christian, how are you behind this?
Saying it has everything to do with you.
Do you think everything about me has to do with gay marriage?
I do,
That's
absolutely.
your first stance when you
Yep.
speak with me?
Absolutely.
There's no other humane
If you want to get in my
conversation you
face
can have
about town
me?
halls, you should have shown up
There's
to
no
one
other
last
humane
year.
thing you can talk about me just saying, oh, I support gay marriage.
Yeah,
That's the
because
only
you're
thing
getting
you
in
have
my
to
face
say.
about a town hall. You
Oh,
could have
just
gone
asking one
last year.
simple question from
Would
right
you
over
like
here
me?
is if you have any plans to have more town.
there's no indication that guy was ever in her face.
That's all this year.
I have town
That was
halls
one
every year.
question.
I have over a dozen
Okay.
every year.
Great. That was my entire question. You didn't have to go
Yeah.
into the spiel about
You could
everything else
have you
wanted
could
to.
have come to any of them last year.
Okay. And I'm
I had
asking you
over a
about this year, not
dozen.
2024. but
Where
for
were you the year
right?
before that?
Okay.
Or the year before that?
It was a simple
Oh,
question. I
because you
asked
know
if
what?
have
Because
any
you
more that
people
you're
on the
going to
left
this
are
year or not.
crazy.
More language, left crazy, left crazy. In fact, you hear that constantly from the right, the lunatic left or the crazy left. They say it over and over and over again. That is by design. That is not a mistake.
So I'm
You're
on the left.
absolutely fucking crazy.
I'm absolutely fucking
You are.
crazy.
And by the way, that is a congressperson talking to one of her constituents. Now, if somebody says you shouldn't bother somebody while they're out in public, that's an argument that I would say I might agree with you on that one. But when Americans are pissed and you're making the laws in this country and you're determining their future, our future, and if somebody were to come up to one of those Congress people and ask them, are you going to do any more town halls? And then you pull out your phone. Now, I will say in fairness, I don't know the interaction between this gentleman and her prior to her starting to film. Maybe something did happen. I don't know. But at the end of the day, when that is your constituent and he is on camera and you are talking to him and you're saying fuck and all this at your constituent, still doesn't, it makes you look really bad.
Get out.
And Nancy Mace has a history of saying and doing batshit crazy stuff.
Get out of my face.
You're insane.
Goodbye.
You're insane.
Fuck you.
She is
You're
insane.
Fuck me. You're
Yep.
gonna be voted
Bye.
out so fast this year. I
I'm
can't
not.
wait for you to fucking
I'm
go
not.
into
I
the
won by
dirt.
so much.
You're a disgrace to this state. That's what you are. You're a disgrace. I asked you a simple question and you just to go on this tirade and tell me fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you.
Disgusting.
Get out of my face.
Fuck you. How about
Get out of my
that?
face.
You're a nasty
Try it again.
bitch.
What's your
You're a
name?
nasty bitch.
What's your
You're a
name?
nasty bitch. That's
What's
my
your name?
You say fuck me?
Yep, I
That's
sure
the
did.
first thing you're gonna say to me is fuck me for
Absolutely.
asking you a question?
Get the fuck out of my face.
Fuck you.
Now.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. You couldn't take me on, baby. Stay the fuck away from me.
That is a fucking congressperson, folks. That is somebody elected to fucking office who's talking to a constituent that way. That is crazy. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. And you see the language that all these MAGA fucks use towards people. They're always, again, it's all professional wrestling. You can't take me on, baby. Like, this again is a lawmaker. If that was your boss and you worked at, say, 7-Eleven, that person would be out of there. They'd be fired. But these people have this attitude now that we could say whatever the fuck we want to. We run this show, and there's nothing you, the people who vote for us, or anybody else, the media, nobody, none of you can do anything about it. We will laugh in your face. We will tell you fuck you because we don't care anymore. We're tired of your crazy liberal ideas of allowing boys to play in girls' sports, and we're going to put an end to it, even though that's not true. That's the narrative that you're shaping so you can turn that person into a bad guy. And again, this is what we're going to have to deal with for a very long time because people are too politically lazy. And until they get the idea that what they're doing is all theater, it's all show, and they're doing it to sucker you to vote for them until you wake up. And maybe you will, because it's going to hit your pocketbook at one point. They could sucker you all day with stupid culture wars, and you'll buy into it until something starts to affect you. Then when it starts to affect you, you'll wake up and you'll go, I finally understand what all those other people like Brian kept saying. This is a terrible mistake to vote for these people. It's not going to work out well for you. Trust me, I'm trying to help you. We're all in the same boat. We're all on the Titanic. Believe me, the Titanic doesn't split in half and liberals are on one side and Donald Trump people are on the other side, and that side gets to go to shore and are saved. We're all sinking on the same fucking boat. And for some reason, you guys don't want to understand this because I've been demonized. People like me have been demonized as somebody that all they care about is illegals coming into the country and causing crime and getting free stuff, which none of that is true. Don't even hit me with your, I can pull out Lake and Riley bullshit. You could give me an anecdote or so, but I can give you 1,000 anecdotes of people who live in this country who's done just as bad stuff as what happened to Lake and Riley. What happened to her is an awful thing, but don't tell me you're going to use that one case to make your argument for an entire people. That's insanity. It's just, this is getting insane. Just getting insane. But Nancy Mace, of course, because she's a drama queen, she had to run to Fox News. This is why she films this, because she needs her viral moments and she needs to be on Fox News. So she filmed this so she could get the attention. So now she could go to Fox News and explain this traumatizing event that happened to her.
Approached me, and I will tell you, I felt threatened, I felt harassed, and I will tell you, as someone who's experienced trauma in her life, and a lot of women will understand what I'm talking about. When
I'm going to say this, any woman that has suffered trauma through sexual assault, rape, or anything like that in their life is awful. And I sympathize with that story. Nancy Mace went through that. I sympathize with her story. But Nancy Mace says this so often, every single time when she's called out for being an asshole, that she thinks that using this is going to protect her from being an asshole. And so now I'm offended that she would use this kind of language because she's trying to garner sympathy from a terrible event, which she will get. But other women have gone through this, but they have suffered the same thing that Nancy Mace has, but they don't use it as their excuse so they could be a fucking asshole. This man, there's nothing about him. She's in a public place. He's far away from her. He has not threatened her one time, but she says, I feel threatened. And that's just such fucking bullshit.
And some guy, when gets in your face and approaches you in the aggressive manner that he did, and you feel like you're in danger, instinctively, as women who've been through trauma, who've survived sexual assault, survived domestic abuse, you have two options. You can fight or you can flee. And Sean,
or you could pull out your phone and tell him to go fuck yourself, and you can't take me on, baby. So that's why I said, this is so fucking crazy, man. I can't stand these people.
I'm a fighter, and I've never stood.
I'm actually done with her anyway, because this is just absolute insanity. What's going on in this country? Insane. And for some reason, people think it's great. People think it's awesome. People are now arguing how great tariffs are. And 3 months ago, they couldn't even spell the word tariff. And now they're trying to explain to me and other Americans how well it's going to work out, because Donald Trump wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, which A, he didn't write the book. A ghostwriter wrote the book. B, The Art of the Deal was obviously a shitty book, because he followed that book up with a book called The Art of the Comeback. And to me, you really don't need to write a book about coming back if you're so good about doing deals in the first place. So Art of the Deal doesn't really check out, guys. But speaking of The Art of the Deal, there's this fucking moron named Grant Cardone, who, if I have had experience with Grant Cardone, he is somebody that is somewhat of a motivational speaker, but he's a big time grifter guy. And he goes around to a lot of car dealerships. He goes around to a lot of businesses and tries to motivate people, the sales staffs and all this stuff. And I actually one time, long time ago, was forced to sit in one of these Grant Cardone meetings. And it was in a room probably full of 20 people. So it was more intimate. It wasn't a big deal. But I remember that a lot of people, I was in sales at the time, and a lot of people in sales get all wrapped up in these guys like Grant Cardone. And I'm going to get all excited now that Grant Cardone got me all jacked up. I knew that this guy was a grifter the second he opened his mouth. I knew that he was full of shit. And I was just like, oh my God, do I really have to listen to him? You may not know who he is. You may know him if you see him, but he was on the Laura Ingraham show the other night. And Grant Cardone is trying to explain to the American people. I mean, if you have 401ks, if you have any money invested, just relax, because we've got the greatest deal maker of all time that is taking care of it. And he wants the American people just to calm down.
Cardone Capital founder and CEO. Grant, great to see you tonight. So
Grant may want to check out a doctor too. He looks awful.
Is it Trump's Jerome Powell comments? Did they really cause what was at one time a fairly significant sell-off in the market today? What else is going on?
Well, Laura, if that's all it takes, okay, come on. Let's keep this real. Donald Trump has plan A, one plan, make America great again. There is no other plan.
All just talking points. I mean, there's really absolutely no, there's no planning, as he says, to any of what they say they're doing. There's tariffs. There's no plan behind this. They can tell you that countries left and right are just so scared now that they are calling Donald Trump. But then when you ask, hey, can you give us the list of the countries? They go, no, we're not going to do that, because there are no countries calling them. In fact, the United States is getting played, and they're getting played hard by China right now. And what happens, what's going to happen is China is going to make relationships with other countries that they had never really had the same relationships with. And it could lead to America kind of being left out in the cold and in the dark. And that's not going to be good for this country. The fact that we are not only demeaning our allies, but we are also trying to take China on again when Trump did it his first term, and he lost that trade war the first time. We had to bail out our farmers the tune of $29 billion because he fucked up the first trade war with China, and he's fucking this one up even worse. But Grant Cardone, don't worry about it. He's going to let you know that you're good.
And the short-term traders or the pundits on TV that are watching Wall Street, look, guys, this is beyond your pay plan. This man is a master at negotiating. This is in negotiations at global levels that we've never seen before. He's transparent. He's authentic. He knows what he's doing, and he will make America great again. So you guys that are at home and you're worried about your 401k, your IRA, or you traders out there or bankers that are worried about your commissions, just step aside. This is not the time for Monday, quarterbacking. You're not in the game. President Donald Trump is. You've underestimated him over and over, and you're doing the same thing this time.
I don't know if he's sick or he just doesn't even believe his own bullshit, but he was struggling to talk. He was struggling to even get his thought out there. But again, everybody, I hope you feel better after that. You could just relax, because Grant Cardone says that we have the greatest negotiator in the history that is doing the negotiation, that he's transparent. And man, I wish Laura Ingraham had the balls to ask him, could you name one thing that he's been transparent about? I mean, we've asked about this healthcare plan that he's been talking about for 8 years. He said it's going to be done in 2 weeks, and it's going to be the greatest, grandest healthcare plan that you've ever seen. But every time you ask him a detail about it, then he goes into, well, we have a concept of that particular plan. I don't necessarily have the plan yet. And for some reason, he gets away with that. American people hear that coming out of his mouth, and they just go, well, it's Donald Trump. I mean, he's the master negotiator. He's the art of the deal. I guess I have to trust him. But if you knew anything about Donald Trump and how terrible he was at business, he is probably one of the shittiest negotiators that this country has ever seen. I brought up on this show before, there's a book about him called Lucky Loser. I highly recommend you get this book and read it. There are receipts in that book about how awful of a businessman he is. And ignore the idiots who say, oh, just because it's in a book, oh, who wrote it? It's fake news. Just ignore them and move on and read the book, because major publishers cannot write a book, especially after they read it. They edit it. They do all that stuff. They can't write a book of lies about somebody and put it out and not expect to be sued over it. Donald Trump has ignored this book, if you notice, hasn't said a word about it. And Donald Trump is one of the most sue-happy people on the planet. He might hold the record for most lawsuits in the history of the country. That's very possible. I don't know that to be fact, but it is possible. But you could read this book and see how terrible of a negotiator he was. There was one company that was negotiating with him, and they realized his tactic early on to just say to cut everything in half. So all they would do is up their number. He would say, cut it in half. And they'd go, okay, deal. You're a tough negotiator. You got me. And they would get what they wanted every time because he was just that stupid. He was so bad at business. Let's remember that he bankrupted 3 casinos, won the Taj Mahal, $675 million he borrowed from junk bonds. And the reason why he'd take out junk bonds is because no bank was going to give him a loan because he defaulted on so many loans prior to that. But he was so adamant about building the Taj Mahal that he took out a loan for $675 million on junk bonds. And junk bonds have significantly higher interest rates than regular loans do. And there was no way he was going to be able to pay for that casino. There was no way it was going to make the amount of money that he needed to pay back with interest. It was impossible. Somebody wrote about it. He got the guy fired. Turned out that the article was absolutely correct. And then he sued Donald Trump and said, hey, fucker, told you this was going to happen. You got me fired from my job. Pay me. And he had to. And, that's not the only thing. The Trump Airlines that he bought this Eastern Air Shuttle for like $365 million. He said it was going to be the next luxury airline and put gold and all this stuff in there. But there's no fucking market for this. He just doesn't think about things. He has the initial plan, but he doesn't put together the plans after that. That's been his entire life. It's been this entire administration. He had Trump University, which was fraudulent. He built people out of their money, and he tried to make it look like it was a school that was going to teach people on how to be rich. All it did was put money in his pocket for a time being and built people out of their money. Nobody came rich coming out of Trump University. And he had to wind up paying like 125 or it was like $65 million, I think he was sued for Trump University. But he had Trump Vodka. And then if anybody knows about the USFL, he bought the New Jersey Generals. And the USFL was a new football league that was going to be the counter to the National Football League. And it was going to be played during the summer. So people who missed football was going to be able to watch football. Donald Trump was adamant, and he convinced everybody that invested into this league. He was adamant that this league was going to be better than the National Football League, and that they should take on the National Football League and play that league at the same time as the National Football League. And they did get some stars to come over to the USFL because they promised lots of money. Donald Trump was adamant about that we could take on the NFL. He finally convinced the owners, okay, let's sue the NFL. They sued the NFL for $1.65 billion, and they won the case. However, you know how much they won in the case? $1. $1 they got in the case. And the judge said, get the fuck out of here. And then, as you can see, the USFL no longer exists. Well, it didn't exist for a long time. I think they brought it back a little bit. But Donald Trump is a terrible negotiator. He's a terrible businessman, but he has a lot of yes men and yes women and sycophants that not only have no shame about themselves, but they have no shame about lying to the American people just about how incredibly brilliant and smart this man is. And it's really a shame, and it's concerning that so many people believe this nonsense. So, Angel, the greatest deal maker. How are you, Angel? I hope you're feeling better. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining. You are awesome. Hope you're feeling well. Hope everything's going well in Alaska. It rhymes with Nebraska. But I'm getting close to the end of the show, so forgive me here, Angel. But a couple more clips that I want to play. And we're going to get to the one clip I said at the end that I just love. I love this clip, but I want to talk about the impact that this administration is having on other people in Congress. Recently, Lisa Murkowski was having a town hall, and she was asked about speaking up against this administration. And she had a very alarming answer, and it was truthful. And she was saying a lot of the things that I think a lot of the people in Congress, especially on the Republican side, want to say, but she actually came out and said it. And there is criticism too towards Lisa Murkowski about her comments, like, hey, if you're not strong enough, maybe you need to step aside, because we have a government that many people consider somewhat of a tyrannical government. And if you have a tyrannical government, the one thing you don't do against it is you don't back down. But Lisa Murkowski had these comments, and it took a lot of people back.
People who are afraid, or who represent people who are afraid. We are all afraid. Okay? That's what I'm stating. But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know, I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice, because retaliation is real, and that's not right. But that's what you've asked me to do. And so I'm going to use my voice to the best of my ability. And sometimes it will be viewed in a way that, well, that's pretty confrontational. And other times it's going to be using my mother's charm that I learned as a young girl, and in direct communication with those that I have made relationships with, and am able to affect some change that way. But I've got to figure out how I can do my best to help the many who are so anxious and are so afraid.
Yeah, that was Lisa Murkowski. And again, it's concerning that that we have somebody in Congress that is that afraid to speak up, because she is afraid of the ramifications and the retaliation against her. And that is really, unfortunately, we don't need people in government like that right now, because there are plenty of people speaking up, and they have absolutely no problem speaking up. And if we get to a point in this country that if you speak up against this administration and you retaliate against them, then that's really the end of this country. I think we're kind of on the bus to the end of this country when you're rounding up citizens or even non-citizens, and you're rounding them up and you're putting them on airplanes and putting them in prisons in other countries without due process and without the proof on which you are putting them on that plane. You have made up proof, and you have sort of things that you can pick off the tree that may satisfy some people who really aren't following it that closely. But it really is a shame that this is the America that we're living in now, and we're only 3 months in. It can only get worse from here. I don't see how it can get better unless you have a lot of brave Republicans who say, this is even too far for me. And you talk to people in the House, you talk to enough of them in the Senate, and say, we are prepared for an impeachment, and we are prepared for a conviction, and get this guy out of office. Is that going to solve the problem? Not necessarily, because we have a lot of bad people still running this country. But I don't know that they have the same cachet as Donald Trump, but two, it could also lead more to a revolt from these MAGA people who say Donald Trump's an in, so we're really going to do and say whatever this right side does. But, again, let's hope it never comes to that. I hope it's just something, the fact that we're even talking about it and it's a consideration just flat out sucks. But more things that suck. One more clip, and then I'm going to get to one of my favorite clips that I've seen on a subject that I've been talking about forever. I'll get to it later, but I want to get to this first. There is a very sad story about a couple of kids in the story, a gentleman named Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. Apparently they were at a track meet and there was a scuffle between the two. And Carmelo Anthony pulled out a knife and he stabbed this young man, Austin Metcalf. Austin Metcalf passed away. And of course, because one, Carmelo Anthony is black and Austin Metcalf is white, that's going to lead to a lot of online chatter, racism, and everything's going to be about race, and it's just another ugly story that we have to deal with in this country. However, there was this gentleman named Jake Long. Jake Long is a guy that was at the Capitol. He was arrested. He was also pardoned by Donald Trump, and he is out. He is also running for Senate in my state of Florida to replace Marco Rubio. He decided that he was going to go to the site of this stabbing and have a rally called Protect White Americans Rally. And the good news about that rally is, if you looked around, it was nothing but a maybe handful of losers that showed up to that rally. There was more good news out of that rally. There was a gentleman there who apparently knew the father of Austin Metcalf and put the father on speakerphone with this gentleman, Jake Long. And Jake Long tried to run his spiel at the father, saying, we really wish you were here because it is your son that is dead and we are here fighting for him and you should be out here fighting for him. Well, his father had a message for Jake Long, and you may want to listen to it. I enjoyed this message, and we'll talk about it after this clip. By the way, I'm going to replay this. Jake Long, he's now responding to this Jake Long after what I just said about how he should be out there. He should be here for his son and all this nonsense. So this is his response.
You are part of the fucking problem, my friend. You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any fucking...
That's called white guilt. No, let it talk.
My son, let me finish. I give you your time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you.
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir.
Wow, you motherfucker.
You are creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness.
You are being weak. I gotta be honest with you about that.
Speaking of weak, look at the guy behind him. And listen, I know I'm a white guy, and I'm sure there are people in the black community that look at that guy not too thrilled with him. And he's calling this, I just want everybody to keep in mind, this is the father of the child that was killed. And these two are harassing the father. This is the mentality again of MAGA. These people think they can say and do whatever the fuck they want now. And unfortunately, us as a society gave them the permission to do this. And if you back this, and this is something that you find beneficial to this country, then it's probably something that I can't associate with, and I can't associate with you.
You're being weak. Condemn your son's killer and the culture that caused it. Hey, Jeff. That's the problem.
By the way, look at this little tiny weasel. He's going around calling people weak. I will guarantee you, I don't even know this, the father of Austin Metcalf, but something tells me if often Metcalf's father was there, he wouldn't be calling that man weak very long. So, I mean, it's just, I can somebody, if you're a MAGA out there and you watch that clip, can you explain to me how those gentlemen yelling at that father were in the right in any way whatsoever? If you can even give me a morsel on a way that they were correct in that conversation, badgering that kid's father to come out to the Protect White Americans rally when he doesn't condone what they're saying. This father clearly is saying, and I believe he said prior to that, that this is not about race. He's not going to make this about race. It's just a terrible incident that happened between two teenage boys. And again, maybe that's another problem we have in this country, is that we're angering younger men in this country too much to where they think they can pull out knives and stab each other. And it's just, we're getting to a point in this country where we've seen ugliness for sure. But for some of us, the ugliness came in drips and it came in segments. For others, it came a lot more. But now everybody's going to see it more and more often. And I just have, again, a bad feeling that we're going to see a lot of bad shit happening in this country as this administration continues to go on. And I hope Americans stand up. We saw protests across the country a couple weeks ago, and we just saw it over the weekend. There's going to be more protests planned. And do they actually do anything? Maybe, because if they continue to get more attention and more people continue to go out to that, something's going to have to be done. What? No idea. But this is how you take down these kind of governments. You don't let them continue to get away with what they're getting away with, because that's where the real danger is. More people speaking out, more people coming out against this government and what they're doing, the better chance that we have to at least put brakes on at least some of what they're doing. If you could put brakes on at least some of what they're doing, that's a win. And then you continue to take on each battle the most you can, and let's see what happens. Okay, finally, last clip of the show. So if you have watched my show, or if you listen to my podcast in the past, you would have heard me talk about this right-wing propaganda media over and over and over again for years. I've been talking about this for a very long time. I talked about it under the Biden administration. I have talked about how dangerous this media is and how dangerous this media could be. And sure enough, this media has pulled off basically the American version of 9/11. When I say American version, I mean that you have people infiltrating this country, doing something so heinous to this country. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing the deaths of it. But what I am comparing is that people in our own country have attacked this country and attacked the brains of people in this country to make people believe that what they are doing is okay, to make people believe that going against the Constitution or ignoring the Supreme Court ruling, ignoring lower court judge rulings, just doing and saying whatever you want to do, this is an inside attack on our country. And because of it, because we have poisoned the minds of the brains of the people in this country for so long, this is why we're at where we're at right now. They have won. And hopefully they don't get to stay along and in this power for too long. But there's a there's a woman named Jennifer Welsh, and she hosts a podcast with another woman named, I forgot her name, I'm sorry, but it's the I've Had It podcast. And she had Rahm Emanuel on, who is a Democrat. And this is what I love so much about this clip. Because Democrats, even Democrats, have fallen for this right-wing propaganda media, which drives me nuts. Rahm Emanuel obviously appears to be one. This Cenk Uygur that people see on Twitter and that runs the Young Turks, he's another one. Bill Maher, he's another one that has fallen for this right-wing propaganda media. There's few others that have done it. And then, of course, there are many other people who really weren't ever even involved in politics falling for this right-wing propaganda media, you'll see it a lot in these bro podcasts, these comedians who think they're funny, and then they just call out woke culture because their jokes don't land with an audience. So they think that their comedy is so brilliant and people aren't laughing because of woke, instead of maybe that their jokes aren't really that funny. But Jennifer calls out Rahm Emanuel when they're talking about what happened in the Democratic Party, and then he decides he's going to go down the road that the right-wing propagandists go down, and she's having none of it. And I fucking love every second of this clip.
You had it with. I would say we have a series of topics that I think sometimes consume, and other topics that don't actually get the attention that they should get. And we ended up fighting for the wrong things. We were really south on kitchen table issues. We weren't really good about the family room issues.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you 100%.
Okay, the only room we were doing really well was the bathroom. And that's the smallest room in the house.
That is such bullshit. That is total bullshit. That is buying into the right-wing media narrative. And I'm so sick of Democrats like you selling out and saying this. You know who talks about trans people more than anybody? MAGA. Kamala Harris talked about home ownership. She talked about kitchen table issues. Trump's over there droning on about Hannibal Lecter. Are you kidding me? This is where the Democrats lose, because we're playing the game with the rule book. They've ripped the rule book up and are cramming it down everybody's throat. And Democrats are upset because Joe Biden pardoned his son. We got to fucking fight. They're the gender-obsessed weirdos, not us. We're the ones who fight for Social Security. We fight for Medicare. And yeah, we're not going to bully trans people. We're not going to fucking do it. Fine.
That, I swear to God, I watched that fucking clip 10 times, and I just saw it today. That is the attitude, that is the approach that every single Democrat needs to take on from now on. Rahm Emanuel was trying to get his stupid words in, and she would not let him do it. You know who does that all the time? Fox News, all those people. That's the tactic they take. The difference is the stuff that she's saying is 100% true. That is dead on. That's exactly the attitude every Democrat should have. Stop letting them shape the narrative of who you are and then buying into it yourself. Rahm Emanuel, what are you, out of your fucking mind? You are no help to this party. If you want to go and complain about woke shit and bathroom shit, go on Bill Maher and go on his stupid little podcast. Go on Charlie Kirk and go talk to him about it. Go talk to the other far right-wing idiots so you can feel satisfied about something that you're threatened about inside, which I don't even know what it is, because she's exactly right. Show me one clip where Kamala Harris said one fucking thing about protecting trans people in bathrooms in this last election. And she's also right too. We're going to protect the marginalized communities. That's it. That's what this is about. This isn't about we're excited, or if a trans person decides they're going to walk into a bathroom and peek at your little girls while they're using bathrooms, that we're fine with that. That's absurdity. That's insane nuts that anybody could allow them to have that thought in their head, that any human being thinks that that's okay. And that's what Democrats stand for. That Democrats stand for girls getting into boxing and UFC and beating up, or boys getting into boxing and UFC as women and going up and beating up girls. That's insanity. If you think for 1 second that that's even a possibility, that a Democrat thinks that, then you've got problems. You've got issues. You're not smart enough to be part of these conversations. If you truly believe that that is the case, find me one clip where Kamala Harris said one thing about trans issues in her little over 100 days to run. Some of you may be out there and saying they ran a commercial the entire election where she was talking about it in jails, having transgender surgeries in jails. That interview was from 2018 or 2019, and all she was talking about and all she was referring to is something that already existed in laws. That's all she was referring to. She never mentioned it once during her campaign. And even if she did, mentioning something like, we are going to project, or we're going to protect marginalized communities. What's wrong with that? What's the problem? I love that clip so much. I'm going to watch it again numerous times after this show because I love the way she handled that. And I'm going to get real excited if I start seeing more podcasters, Democrats, people on the left handle those interviews just like she did. And I'm going to get even more excited if they do it in front of the people who shape those narratives, like Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk. Unfortunately, we are trying that. You see Bill Maher having Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on his show. You see Gavin Newsom having Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on his show, but they're buddying. They're trying to find common ground. There is no fucking common ground with these people. If you want to find one or two subjects, that's fine. But overall, these people are fucking monsters. They're terrible people out to destroy this country. I'm not interested in common ground. I'm interested in reshaping the narrative back to what Democrats, the left, liberals, progressives, whatever you want to call them, where you reshape that narrative to what they actually are and what they actually represent, and stop letting this billion-dollar industry that has been manufactured and moving along for so long now that it has worked hook, line, and sinker. Most Americans don't follow politics the same way I do, or some of you out there are watching politics. So they just take it, they listen to a couple things, and if it sounds entertaining enough, they'll listen to it and they'll believe everything that's being said. Gotta stop that, because if we don't stop that, Donald Trump may be president again in 2028. But that is how you do it, folks. That's exactly how you do it. I wish I could meet that woman just so I could tell her how much I appreciate just what she said to Rahm Emanuel and how she would handle anybody else that tried that bullshit with her. And then I would leave her alone. I would just say, thank you so much. And I'd leave, because that was awesome. I loved it. And I hope we continue to see more of that. So, all right. Anyway, going to wrap up the show. And I appreciate everybody watching. If you could, while you're watching, if you could hit subscribe and you can hit the like button and all that shit, I would definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much to all the subscribers that watch. Angel, I'm glad to hear that you are feeling better. You know, I know we'll keep in touch, and I appreciate you always coming around. Please check us out again next Tuesday. We'll be on at 7 o'clock. Alana should be back with me next Tuesday. And she may be, she won't be doing her show, the Quest show, but you could check out her show, and you can subscribe to her show. I do have the link to her show in the description below. So again, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again next time.